Dia de los Muertos, Day of Day episode here on Inside the Hexagon. I hope we're not talking about the Houston Dynamo, obviously recent news with the reports of Ben Olsen being the new coach of the Houston Dynamo. What does that mean? Let's dive into it here on Inside the Hexagon, a podcast brought to you by the Striker. Obviously, Houston going through a transitional period here. Another coaching change, the second under Pat Onstad, the general manager. And well, if you haven't heard, we have all that stuff for you on thestriker.com. 30 days free for the new subscribers, and obviously we appreciate everybody that's been supporting us over at the Striker, independent journalism, trying to get as real as takes as we can. I can tell you that from my side of it, and I think we can go on why we do what we do. But I do want to start off and say, if we peel back the curtain here a little bit, for me, when I started doing this, it was to kind of do a bit more, try to treat the Dynamo like other sports are treated with coverage, right? In the city of Houston, across the United States, more serious, more critical coverage that, Glenn on his show calls it healthy pressure. I just think it's needed pressure, right? Every other sport has it. Every other major sport has it. And I think if soccer wants to get to that point in the United States, it needs to have it. Today you'll get some of that critical take here on Inside the Hexagon, as you may get in my writing and on thestriker.com. By the way, I'm sorry for taking you out of this. Laura Gomez, also my co-host here, also shares a passion for the sport. She can tell you her side of things, and I didn't mean to just kind of go into this dreadful beginning, but I think we got to get serious here today. And well, first of all, I do want to welcome you, Laura. How are you doing? How was your Halloween? And hopefully it wasn't as spooky as some of these news that we're about to dive into.
No, I think that the spookiest part, the scariest part, honestly, is some of the news of, not all of the news, but particularly this one, but we'll go in depth of that. But yeah, I kind of want to ditto also, we just mentioned about us wanting to have good coverage. And that's why we have several people, like myself, I cover the Dash and the Dynamo in certain different aspects that you don't, or that, we just kind of team players in certain things. And we've been covering this team for so many years now. And now we're with a Striker and, a media outlet that's dedicated to soccer, in which we really do believe in. And we feel comfortable being our journalistic selves and really going out there and getting the truth in the sports and being real and talking about what we personally feel, or like how we have covered the team in the journalistic way. So I think that's, I want to thank our listeners and our readers for that, and to encourage those that are still not sure if they want to sign up to, the Striker, to be part of our dream too, to keep continuing covering these local teams, and the same for our, colleagues in other cities of the U.S. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll second that by saying, you're not going to get, I don't think, and maybe you don't like critical coverage. So, I guess if that's you, then this message isn't for you. But if you do want to see your sport get covered in a more serious way, I'll tell you straight up, I don't think the Chronicle is going to do it. And I don't think any of the local TV stations are going to do it.
Not constantly, for sure.
And not because, at least with TV, you don't have the time. Radio, I don't think, obviously, Glenn has his show on ESPN. Cesar Procel has his show on TUDN Radio in Spanish. But they're limited slots a week, and also support those shows as well. Call into those shows. I always say them, the more the merrier.
Mm-hmm.
I invite competition, and I hope we get more talk, because we don't want to be the only loud voices, and just kind of, sometimes just, get seen maybe as the crazy people over here, right? Because we have a strong opinion.
Madness.
I think if you share that opinion, echo that as well. And, it is a vital point for the organization. Again, I'll tell you, I like many of you, started as a fan, going to Robertson Stadium, putting out my money for season tickets when I was a college student, and I'm grateful to be doing this as a job. And I think, even if I wasn't doing this job, I'd still be trying to do this in some way, shape, or form. I did it for a lot of years out of my own time, and I think I can speak for Laura as well on that end. And I think you're not going to get that kind of passion out of most people in that building over there at Houston Dynamo FC from the moves we've seen. Maybe you are, and hopefully you are, and hopefully we start seeing some change, and hopefully we start seeing some of these moves to make that club better. But with all that put forth together, let's move on to the recent news, because this was supposed to be a different era, right? This was supposed to be a change, and maybe there's arguments to say, well, why not let Pat Onstad bring somebody that he trusts, a former colleague. Obviously, Onstad was the assistant manager under Ben Olsen at DC. But the reports coming from The Athletic and also from ESPN, MLS Soccer, generating last week on Monday that Ben Olsen was reportedly in talks to be the Dynamo coach. MLSsoccer.com, I believe, put out there that Juan Carlos Osorio was also contacted. Those talks didn't advance. Hugo Perez, the national team coach of El Salvador, reportedly also in talks, although there's like a YouTube video out there, a report from El Salvador, where it was, supposedly Perez wasn't in talks. There is something, if you follow the NFL, sort of like the Rooney Rule in MLS, where you have to interview other candidates to kind of make it a diversity search, right? I don't have the exact rules in front of me, but essentially, DC United, if you look up this report, is getting fined for not undergoing through this process with Wayne Rooney. And I wonder if maybe that's the reason why the Houston Dynamo were linked to candidates like Hugo Perez, like Juan Carlos Osorio, like Jimmy Lozano in the prior coaching search. Are those serious
candidates?
Yeah, an extension of a search, or is that just to kind of check a box and say we reached out? Ultimately, Ben Olsen, you had the most, we hadn't heard anything for about a month. Ben Olsen emerges, and by the end of the week, Ben Olsen is now reported to have agreed to terms with Houston Dynamo to be the next head coach. So, if you've heard the Striker Text MLS podcast, you've heard some of my thoughts there over the past weeks. We'll dive a little bit more into those, but Laura, I want to give you the space now to kind of give us your thoughts about how you've managed to hold some composure over these news.
Yeah, I want to say, I don't know, I don't even have a word, honestly, that really describes kind of like what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling, in the sense of that what seems logical to me. I would want to say that the people that are fully in charge of the team would also think that they're logical, but I'm beginning to think that obviously I'm not beginning to think, but I know obviously everybody thinks differently. But just for me, I think the word I want to say that I was kind of saying off before we were recording, I want to say flabbergasted. I'm just really flabbergasted. I'm just like in awe of the blindness, the out of touch. It's crazy. I want to say it's crazy to me. And, I've been reading, because I always like to read, different angles of different outlets. And then this one in particular, I was reading a lot of national outlets, because I want to see, the Dynamo is making news, but not really in a positive way. I want to say that, one or two out of four newspapers that I saw internationally, they were kind of saying, Olsen deserves a second opportunity in the MLS, but
that's fine. Yeah. Not here.
But not with Houston. So it's amazing to me how outlets that barely pick up news from the Dynamo, because let's face it, the team hasn't really given a lot to talk about besides the signing of HH. So you're telling me they're picking up stories of the new coach, and even before it's officially announced, they're already giving the team the doom kind of sentence, saying, he did an okay job where he was at before. This isn't the fit that the Houston needs. And I'm like, if they see it and I'm saying it too, the people in charge, what are they seeing? What are they trying, like, what are they playing at? Like, what's the long term? Because even if you see the polls that different people did on Twitter, if they agreed or if they were okay with it, even if they want to, another coach, most of the answers were like, yeah, why did the Dynamo hire this dude if it's true? And it's nothing personal against, the new supposed coach, but it's just looking at his actions, looking at his record, looking at the link that he has with Pat. I mean, what is it? Is it really because he's talented? And the question is very, very, very valid. It's say, or is it just connection?
I think it raises more concerns because, there is a sense of wanting to control what the coach does. I think I'll say this: Pat Onstad, the general manager, the key figures at the club, they'll have their time to have their say. Whenever I'm sure Ben Olsen gets presented, we'll see when that is. We'll see when that gets announced officially, and when the press conference is scheduled. It may get scheduled as far as January. We don't know, because that's how these things go sometimes. But Pat Onstad said he wanted to be transparent, right? That was one of the things when he first came here, and we haven't heard anything as far as his coaching search. I reached out to the organization. I think you reached out as well. There's no official coaching update. There's nothing to say. And I think that from that side of it, I mean, they know what the perception is, and I think there is some planning about how this is going to get announced and when.
Yeah, but I also think that the fans also have, obviously, I don't believe that the fans should control a team because, there's a lot of opinions and they're passionate. I mean level-headed sometimes, but
I think we've spoken about this before in other episodes where I do think there is a sense of wanting to control the way this team is operated. For example, they don't want a strong-headed or coach with a lot of leverage, right? A coach with.
But those are the ones that get you championships. Obviously, the ones that are being controlled haven't really done.
I agree, but I think
for me, it's
but they're not willing. But they're not willing to work with somebody like that. They don't want somebody to challenge their way of doing business, or just of operating a soccer team.
But it hasn't helped, right?
Because from the beginning, those were the conditions that they didn't want to bring. They didn't want to hire a guy that was going to bring his own staff.
But Pat's doing it.
Well, that's different rules for different people, right? And honestly, that's also, it is funny because they put so much emphasis on MLS experience. And again, if you heard our MLS podcast, you go back to the better part of the last MLS Cup championship coaches over the last part of the decade. A lot of them weren't coaching in MLS or weren't MLS head coaches before they took their current jobs. Pat Onstad, by those requirements, probably wouldn't have been the GM because they didn't have enough experience, and not as a GM at least. He was a technical director up there in Columbus. Was starting to get a say in some things. At least that's what we've heard, right? But no, it's just, I mean, and I've heard, there was some, not animosity, but I think there was some disagreement. I mean, you would think once you're having some losing results, at some point between Nagamura and Onstad, so maybe they get along better, and maybe you want to risk your career on somebody.
Yeah, but just because you already know somebody doesn't mean they're going to have good results on the field. Well, like I said, for me, this hiring has been, I'm just like, again, it's nothing against personally. Right. I've never met the guy. I mean, maybe in some games when I was really younger, perhaps when I was like even watching them, or of course in history that he had in the prior, DC, but not to sit down and say, hey, I know the dude, I know what he's capable of not. So what do we have to go based on? What we see, what he did and what he didn't do.
I based it off his results in DC, and I know a lot of people will focus on the good seasons.
But all in all, what huge thing did he do?
Well, honestly, first of all, he shouldn't have had 10 seasons at DC United. He had them because it became an unambitious club, and obviously his weight there as a legend during his playing days, I think, helped him in the fact that that is also the reason why he had that coaching gig. Because if he hadn't played at DC United, he hadn't coached anywhere else. I mean, he was a player that retired, and they handed the job to. And I think if you look at a similar instance, and really the only thing closest to that sample size is Peter Vermees in Kansas City. But Peter Vermees missed the playoff, like once, over a long stretch of time. Won an MLS Cup in 2013, obviously developed some players there. I think there are people saying that Olsen didn't have resources at DC United. Well, I don't think Peter Vermees had overwhelming resources either at Kansas City. Maybe a more engaged ownership group, but ultimately, I think, again, in short spurts, you saw where you made the playoffs. I think in a more competitive Western Conference, in the case of Vermees, that's one thing I do check against Olsen. The Eastern Conference isn't as competitive, so the fact that he made it 6 years out of 10, I'm not going to put a lot of stock on that. I'll put more stock on what his teams did in the playoffs, and honestly, they didn't do a lot. They went one and done on 4 occasions. For 2 of those occasions, he had Wayne Rooney, a player that any MLS team would have loved to have, the second all-time goal scorer in the Premier League, and Luciano Acosta, an emerging midfielder, one of the better midfielders, I think, during his time at DC United. In the scope of the league, and for as much as everybody says, well, the quality of the roster, you had 2 bona fide players that I think, quality-wise, better than any combination of 2 players here in Houston currently. And that's where I kind of compare. And, what's he going to do with Herrera and Ferreira? Ferreira that lacks service, Carrasquilla that he wasn't able to do with Wayne Rooney and Luciano Acosta. And again, when you see some of the gritty plays that they've had at Wayne Rooney at DC United, I think they won in spite of Ben Olsen. And I say that with all due respect. I think there was more to be seen, and ultimately you can say from the narrative, from everything we've seen from covering this league for years, ran those guys out of town. Those guys got frustrated, right? Luciano Acosta had an offer reportedly for Paris, for PSG. Didn't happen. From what I've heard, Olsen had some part to play in keeping him there. Essentially ends up leaving for Liga MX, and then now is back in MLS, and this year was the assist leader with Cincinnati, won a playoff game with them. Wayne Rooney left back to England, right? Supposedly his wife didn't want to live in the United States, and that was the big reason. But she's Wayne Rooney's back with DC United now as a head coach, and now we're not hearing about the wife issues anymore. So was that just an excuse? Again, on the field, just I don't see. I think there was enough of a sample size in 10 years, and ultimately, maybe this is a step. Here's what I will say, and I think I speak for you in the same thing. I want nothing more than to see the Dynamo make the playoffs. I want to see them succeed. I hope I get laminated like the doubters for Austin FC, and I hope Houston Dynamo win an MLS Cup. Like that, I'm not against that, and I'm not rooting for them to fail. Right, but I just don't think Ben Olsen is the guy to take him there. I think, yeah, if they give them 10 years like DC United, then sure, the Dynamo will get back to the playoffs eventually.
Shut your mouth! Don't you dare! What's wrong with you? Don't say stuff like that.
No, they say,
this team, Victor, this team will not look. The fan base has been.
No, that's not. No, look,
has
I'm
been
sorry.
losing.
That's another.
The fan base has been getting slimmer by the year.
And that's the thing. That's another key issue. I think now it's just a handful of fans.
Years, the team will not be there. I'm telling you that. If they give him 10 years, the team will not be there.
The team will be here because it's an important market for MLS, and that's kind of.
Then it will be another team, but the Houston Dynamo will not survive 10 years. I'm telling you, it will not. If you're gonna say he's gonna be here for 10 years,
this is not like other leagues. You're economically sustained by the system, and that works against Houston. It worked against them, in the Gabriel Brenner years, and I think again that's part of the problem. The fan base doesn't take a hold of this team. The fact that they allow these kinds of things to just, all right, we'll accept it. Part of it, like you said, it's part, some of the fans have just left and said, I'm not dealing with this anymore. I want my sanity, right? So I'm canceling my
sanity.
And,
well,
and
I'm going to tell you this, like me, just the day that the rumor started, I like to go and listen to people, what they're saying in Twitter specifically. And I was reading some stuff and people were like, well, I think I'm going to cancel my, my season seats, because they're like, this is
But they
something
don't
that
care about that. They
I
don't
know, but
care
I'm just
about that.
saying,
In fact,
at some
I
point
would
they have
say,
to care. Let me tell you why. This is why I think that the team has to care specifically in the next 4 years, because there's going to be a lot of eyes in Houston, specifically because of the World Cup that's going to be held here in the next 4 years. So it's called, if you're going with a team, and a lot of the phrases is like Ciudad de Fútbol or City of Soccer, and you have 2 people in the stands, they have to care at some point. If not economically, not being embarrassed when they don't have TV deals, or they're not getting, if when there's a soccer game, and whenever an LA team plays here, whatever better team plays
right.
here, and the TV's here, and they have 4 people standing in the stands with a banner, because that's what's going to happen. That is what is going to happen. Even if economically it doesn't hurt them, like it's going to be embarrassing, because changes need to be done in the positive way.
I think,
And going into, like, again, I like to compare the Astros. Yeah, it's just a different, totally completely different franchise and totally completely different sport. But Victor, I was there covering the team when the team had 100 losses in their record. 100 losses. I had free tickets. I bought 2 and they would give me 2 free. That's how bad it got. And I got hot dogs and a Coke. Go right now and try to buy, even before it was, the final. Try to go buy tickets for $2 like I did 6 years ago or 7 years ago. It's not going to happen, because they did changes that were sanity for the basic, normal baseball fan. So if you're going to tell me that we're reporters and we've been covering the league for so many years, and this choice doesn't make sense, just imagine the fan
and
that's
I
there,
think,
a hardcore fan, or even a fan like my dad, or like, my father-in-law, or even my brother, that don't follow the Dynamo because they're, like you said, we're over it, 2 seasons ago. And they're like, oh, they're just a normal fan. And then they see this, they're like, bro, I'm done. What do
well,
you expect from me?
that's the thing. You have there's more coverage of baseball, right? And I think in those days they knew that the
Now,
ownership. No, I think even then, I think people knew that the owner at that time, Drayton McClain, was focused on selling the team, and he wasn't going to invest in it, and people weren't bothering to show up for the same reason. And I think there's a sector of the soccer public here that goes to the games and see these guys aren't serious. This team doesn't have a playing style, doesn't have an idea of how they want to
accomplish the playoffs.
Attack, defend. Yeah. People like your dad, people like our friends, people that watch the sport, people that are fans of other leagues, and they come to the games and they see, I'm not coming to this consistently. Like, I mean, no, this team doesn't want to win. They're not aiming for any of that. And that's the reason why the team markets to the knowledge, the sector of the city that isn't as knowledgeable on soccer, right?
You're gonna run out of people.
The city, the part of the city that, maybe it's a casual sports fan, never been to a soccer game, just wants to go out, have a good time. All right, let me go check it out. And I think that's why, they do the hold it down, and that's why they appeal to.
Yeah, but that's gonna get old. That's gonna get old, because nobody really wants to go.
Well,
go
it just
downtown, pay
has to be good
$40
enough.
for parking.
It
Do
just
all
has to
that
be
hot
good
mess,
enough
but
until the people that are in charge get other jobs, right? Or until they move on to something else, and then they leave it behind, and it's somebody else's problem. I think until you have people, again, that's why we've stressed the point of people in charge that know the sport, that are gonna do something to increase its sustainability, to make it better, to make the product better. Ted Siegel, I've asked questions, since he was announced. What are his real motivations? Is he what are his motives for investing? Does he truly want to better the product? I'm sure every owner wants to sell out, but what are you willing to do to go and get it, right? Or is it just investing enough to, again, increase your investment like Brenner did, and then once MLS is more valuable in a couple of years, sell the team? These are, I think, valid questions. Invest enough to people think, oh, maybe this new owner is interested, and people give you the benefit of the doubt, right? And stop kind of hope taking out the pitchforks like they did with the previous ownership group, or where it just kind of went all the way downhill, where MLS maybe had to step in. I mean, I think there are a lot of parts of the stories that we don't know, and again, for that reason, people aren't in the know as much as with other sports, and I think that's why getting jaded, fans getting uninterested is probably among the worst things that could happen. But I think you're seeing it. I mean, even the supporters groups, they're just all right. We're just, I mean, and I
it's
think you
hard to
should
tell
be.
people, hey, join us. It's really
No,
hard for that. And then you see decisions like this that I don't remember when, honestly, I don't remember when was the last time that an MLS coach got hired and the uproar was so negative, even before it was official.
well, when Nagamura was hired, I think it was a similar situation.
I don't even think as much, because at that point they were still like, okay, well, it's a new owner, so let's see what happens. But after Nagamura, I think that's like the last straw of having these coaches that, for whatever reason, unfortunately, they're not the right fit for the Dynamo. And that in paper, if
Right.
you look at the record and stuff, logically, I would be like, it's not a good fit with Nagamura. I would have said no. And I said in the beginning,
No,
I
it
don't
wasn't good
think
fit
the right
because
fit.
there was an inexperienced coach, and we said it
Exactly.
at the
So now
time.
we're going
People
back.
said it at the time.
We're going back almost to the same thing. Yeah, we mentioned we want an MLS experience, but I think that the Dynamo's past just having MLS experience. I think on a wish list, we should have put MLS proven experience, which is something that I think we also mentioned.
Yeah, and we did. Well, at least on this podcast, we did. And then we went through some of the candidates that were out there, and we said, if you can't get some of those guys, the Caleb Porter, Savarese, who, by the way, just signed an extension in Portland. Wilfred Nancy was out there, but obviously he's back with Montreal, and I don't know if he would have been the exact fit here. But I think any candidate with MLS experience that had proven to be a winner in recent memory was taken for, because there's too many. Well, there's almost 30 teams in the league. There's just not enough candidates
that's not an
there.
excuse. If other teams can do it,
No.
why
I'm
can't the
not saying
fourth
that's an
largest
excuse.
city
I'm
do it?
just saying among the proven candidates that were out there, you didn't have enough for the Dynamo to have somebody come into this job. And honestly, maybe I would argue they've had candidates that probably said, this job's not for me. Ben Olsen is among the list of candidates, just like the unproven candidates that
Because he
have been
has
here
no other
before.
options. I'm probably sure, not to be rude or anything, but
Exactly. Or guys that have been hired here, with no offense, but are just guys that are willing to get into MLS, dip their toe in MLS for the first time, or don't have other options, other coaching gigs because of the lack of experience, and that's why they get hired. We'll see where it gets to get with Ben Olsen, but I do think, and I'll keep stressing, this was an opportunity, a big opportunity to go a different direction, to bring in a coach that not just was going to better the first team, dig into the academy, because that's an area that needs to be improved soon.
and even before the 2023 season starts, I'm already over it.
Well, and you don't blame people for not buying in. And look, if it's like the Dash, they'll just hand out free tickets and have some of these sellouts, artificial sellouts, like the Montreal game, right? That was one of the sellouts that kind of baffled us this year, because the true sellouts this year, or this past year, were the Ache game, right? The one where he debuted, and then there's the one where the LAFC game, right?
Yeah, LA game.
And actually, I don't know if the Galaxy one was a sellout. That might have been a sellout too. But that was near full.
Two major ones.
That was near full. That was among the better attendances too. And we'll see where this goes. I think to me the biggest thing is the lost opportunity. Could have brought it.
Madness. It's madness because we're going back into the same thing. And when I say this, not to sound biased or anything like that, because I think that we take our job seriously to try to inform not only what we feel personally in the sense of the.
Well, if we were biased, we'd be, hey, Ben Olsen's here. Everybody celebrate. He's 10 years.
No, but I'm saying
he's got MLS experience. He's got 10 years.
I know, but I'm just saying, no, bias can be for the positive or the negative. That's what I'm saying. And here we're sounding a little bit negative, things like that, but it's with facts that I'm giving this opinion, professional opinion. And also because, like you mentioned, we want this team to win because it also makes better coverage. It makes better journalistic stories. It gives out more positive, coverage for the Dynamo. honestly, I'm tired of talking to other journalists in other states, and it's always the same bullying for and myself. I mean, it's true, they bully us because they're like, oh, so when are you guys gonna actually have a real team? And I'm like, bro, you're talking to the wrong person, because it ain't me. I don't have that power. So it's just, for me, it's kind of the sense that I want this team to be good personally, professionally, everything, because it's just been the same thing over and over. And I feel like we're stepping into something that will be the same thing. Hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully I'm wrong. I was right with Nagamura, nothing personal. I was right with him. And this in the paper, I'm not seeing it lead into a good way. Yes, you know, Olsen's known for doing a lot with the little, like what he did in DC, but it's not the same thing.
I argue with that. I think he overachieved in some seasons, and he can get credit for that.
When he had to go into the big scene, he flopped. That's the word.
Well, because the playoffs is a different situation. You know, not everybody is aiming to be
so the goal
number
here
one
is
in the
just
conference.
To get to playoffs. Then that's what I get.
That's a goal for a lot of teams. I'm not saying that's necessarily, you know, but I do think that for a lot of teams, it's just get to the playoffs, and then that marks a successful year. For Houston, because you know the bar's been so low, I think at this point, just getting to the playoffs would be a success. And maybe Olsen, they believe he's that guy. But honestly, you know, even with Olsen, they need to better this roster massively this offseason. And I hope this doesn't signal that a lot of guys are coming back and they're just hoping Olsen to do better with some of the guys that were already here. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case.
Enough of that. The heartbreak or headache that I have right now, I'm not sure which one or both. Let's change the subject and let's go into something else.
Yeah. Well, first of all, we could use a drink sponsor, especially with this season upcoming. But I don't know. Nothing official yet, right? So maybe the Dynamo will have a change of heart. We'll see where that goes. But we will tell you who does support the striker and who does help make our coverage happen, just like many of you. Support for the striker and, of course, Inside the Hexagon is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Their products are precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped's Performance Package, the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. Join over 6 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code MLS at manscaped.com. If my math is correct, that's about 12 million balls. So there you go. It's going to be a tough season, right? The last thing you want is having, you know, some junk. That technically not the trunk, right? So that's what would that qualify? Let me just go into this here. I'll just say this much: Performance Package 4.0 has arrived. It is a game changer. I've tried it out. This is probably a buy you're going to have anyway. So you buy one of these, you're supporting the striker, you're supporting Inside the Hexagon, you're supporting our critical coverage. And if you don't like our coverage, then, you know, have fun with your bush. Inside this package, you'll find the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, the Weed Whacker, the Nose Hair Trimmer, which, by the way, that works well. Get those bad hairs out of your nose. The Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant, which I'm sure there's a lot of... we're going to transition there to something about corporate America and front office jokes, but I'll just continue this. Crop Reviver Toner, Performance Boxer Briefs, a travel bag for your goodies. There you go. Some of these guys, again, could use this product. Some of the guys in the team would probably have better seasons. So there you go. Manscaped code MLS. It's time to take care of yourself. Go to manscaped.com, get 20% off free shipping, and the code MLS. There's a lot of stuff there. If you want to get something, different categories, depending on your price range. Some of the stuff is already discounted, so this code MLS will give you an even bigger discount. And of course, again, you support the striker, you support Inside the Hexagon, and you continue our great coverage. And then who knows? Maybe we'll get a beer sponsor, a liquor sponsor that can help us throughout the season as well if we get this train going. So get 20% off and free shipping with the code MLS at manscaped.com. 20%. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Use the code MLS. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. I'm sure some of the people at Dynamo need Manscaped so they can trim everything that needs to be changed out of that organization. Let's see some of the other things that are going on. Laura Gomez, what do you have for us as far as the other news cycle as we start revving up here in the off season? It's been a month after the end of the year, and we're starting to see other news cycle out of the offices of the Houston Dynamo headquarters.
Yeah, we got I'm sure you got it too, a press release that Jessica O'Neill will now she will also now be the COO of the Dynamo while being the president of the Dash as well.
Yeah, was hired as Ted Siegel to be the president of the Houston Dash. I like that hire. I thought it was.
I mean, she's amazing. Honestly, I've had the opportunity to interview her and talk to her like in a social setting as well, and I think that she has a lot of experience in the MLS and in the soccer world itself and other sports too. And she's a very smart woman, very passionate, and has experience. And that's one of the hires that I'm like amazing. And I think it's a perfect fit for, a city like Houston. And I think that the Dynamo will also hopefully benefit from her brains and her experience.
Yeah, she's been a game changer for the Dash. Obviously, the Dash,
that's a perfect word,
didn't have anybody at that position in the president's role, so has stepped into that. Has again brought in some initiatives that has increased attendance. I think by any means necessary. Which the Dash are at that point that you need to better the product. I think one of her hires. Maybe ironically enough, was Juan Carlos Amoros, the interim head coach that took them to the playoffs. Now, we'll see what the story is there. I think maybe a mistake to let him get away, but again, we don't know some of the factors that dove into this decision. But sticking to O'Neill, some good moves for the Dash. I think, regardless that it was announced to sell out, which I didn't see the need to do because I think it was a remarkable attendance and a historic moment, the playoff game for the Houston Dash. But I think the initiative, the ambition to want to sell that game out, to try to get as many people in the building, I think great for the Dash. What I liked about her hire, and obviously, again, she's a Ted Siegel hire, which obviously Ted Siegel, big on Jessica O'Neill, and obviously promoted to the COO position. But what I liked about that hire was that she was somebody specific to the Dash. The fact that now she has to share that position as the COO of the entire organization, that's where I get a little worried. Obviously, the Dash have a GM who worries a little bit more about the sporting side of things, contracts, all that stuff. But to me, this isn't much different than, John Walker was the president of the entire club, managed both teams, and you decided you wanted somebody specifically for the Dash, which again needed, but now you're taking away that person and you're making them an extra role.
That is worrisome too as well, because obviously we saw what she could do in a short amount of time that she had with the Dash and do what she did. Like you mentioned, she did amazing things on and off the field to really create a difference also on what was going on with the team. Besides that, the team made it to the playoffs and was doing well. Unfortunately, they didn't advance to the semifinals. But hopefully she'll have the support that she needs, and the growth with the Dash will continue.
And it's interesting to see what some of these changes are, because of course, part of what's in this release is that, she's taken over the duties for John Walker, who has left the organization in October. Obviously, his departure was announced earlier in the year. The search ongoing for a president of business operations. So we'll see what that hire entails and who's going to take those responsibilities and what's going to happen. Again, as this organization has a few changes this offseason in staffing, on the field as well. So one to follow for sure. And we wish her best of luck. And also Kenny Bundy staying with the organization.
Yep.
I think that's one where fans were hoping that would happen. I don't think there was a reason why it wouldn't, but obviously in years past, the interim head coach of the Houston Dynamo, after being the interim coach, that ended up being their exit from the club. Wade Barrett, Davey Arnaud. in this case, Bundy goes back to Houston Dynamo too, stays. I think they were doing some good things there.
Yeah.
Obviously, him going to the first team cut short the aspirations for Dynamo 2 to win the MLS Cup Pro. Getting eliminated in their first playoff game at Tacoma, the Seattle Sounders affiliate. And so I think from that end, there's a bit of unfinished business. Obviously, from what we saw with the first team, and with Dynamo 2, of course, prepares his teams well, puts guys in good positions to succeed. And I think if he continues to have success, he'll eventually be back in MLS. Maybe a coach to groom for the future for the Houston Dynamo. I think that's the hope. And obviously, I think kind of starting to set the tone that wasn't going to be the head coach of the Houston of the first team, which again, I thought that was the right move. I don't think in those 5 games was enough to say, hey, he
let
should
be charge of this team,
or that he's ready, right?
A very hard, also, I would say a very difficult team.
Yeah. Also didn't mean they have to go after Ben Olsen, but that's another story.
Yeah.
Anything else you got for us?
Let's not go back. We're going to be here another 2 days. No, I think that's it from my part. Give us your thoughts. Were we too harsh in the podcast? Are you a Ben Olsen fan? Do you think he can make a difference? Did you like what he did in DC? I don't know. I just feel like this isn't the location for him right now.
Yeah. You can give us those thoughts, obviously, on thestriker.com. Several stuff up there where you can go in and comment and give us your take, look back at some of the coverage throughout the season. Yeah. Twitter as well, at Laura Gomez News, at Victor Araita, at The Striker News. And yeah, continue on this conversation. It's going to be a important off season. Obviously, now we're in a World Cup month. Ooh. Are you feeling it? Are you feeling the fever?
I'm not. Besides that, obviously, Colombia didn't make it. I mean, the other team that I'm rooting for are like other Spanish-speaking teams and the U.S. But I don't know. I don't feel like the commercials are as pumped, or like the official, what is it, the Mundial song? Like, I haven't heard it. I don't know. I feel like it's lacking.
Very weird. It's very weird. It's we're like 19 days away, and it doesn't feel like it. But it's gonna sneak up.
Crazy. Yeah, 19. Yeah, no.
And the most important thing is just over a month and a half from now, or about a month and a half from now, the focus begins to 2026, which is obviously going to be the World Cup here in the United States, Canada, Mexico. So there we go. Lots to talk about. You can talk it with us on thestriker.com, on Twitter, everywhere else, and I'm sure there'll be more news coming here shortly, so we'll have that for you. Subscribe to Inside the Hexagon wherever you listen to podcasts. If there's a place where you like to listen to podcasts, we don't have it up yet, let us know. We can get that up there for you and make this as easy as possible. So anytime we have these rants, you can hear them as soon as we.
That's not rants. We're giving you facts. We're basing our information on facts. So, and with a touch of rants, yes.
Okay. So I'm gonna go just chug a bottle of whiskey.
Oh my God, Victor.
And if I'm still alive next week, we'll see you back here. Also,
yes, we will see you back here. We will be back here. Yes. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe for Victor's sanity so he can keep going, and for us to keep covering this team that hopefully will have big changes prior to the 2023 season.
Yeah. And we are in November, so we shouldn't be having those player decisions, player contract options, some player moves. There's a half trade window after MLS Cup. Again, thestriker.com. It may be easier to search it, but you should have it up there. There's an ultimate offseason guide where there's all the dates there, so you can focus on some of those things. See who's protected from the expansion draft that'll be coming up. As well on November 11th, with St. Louis joining the league, and then free agency opening midway through this month. So need to get up on all that stuff, thestriker.com.
Until next time.
Bye.